Heard on Thursdays with Nikki is about to go live online. Catch HOT, the iconic radio show that made Philippine FM radio talk, every Thursday on the Monster.
Streaming video on the Monster Facebook page at RX931, the Monster YouTube channel at RX931, and twitch.tv/Monster RX931.
You heard on Thursdays host, Nikki Porter. Stand by and enjoy the program.
Hey Monsters, it's Nikki Porter back with you for more hot conversations on HOT. That's heard on Thursdays, the show that made FM radio talk. Only in Manila's hottest, Monster RX93.1. So remember the song that Sam Smith had a few years back? It's like Money on My Mind. Yeah, it's really like it's repetitive lyrics about money on your mind. You have no money on your mind. Very relatable lyrics. And it's all very well for Sam to release a track like that. But in these tough times, we need to have money on our minds, to have money in our pockets specifically. So we do things for the money, especially after the last 2 years. When we were doing it all for our health too. So while we were doing it for our health, though, most of us lost a lot of money, but that was necessary. Now, though, is a time to create that wealth to make a better life for ourselves. And today is a time of opportunity, Monsters, both for those who are financially stable and for those who are just starting out in their careers, as well as those among you who are in some form of flux or transition. Tonight's guest is a goal-setting coach whose special practice is to help you put your money in your mind. She's a money mindset coach and popular YouTube and TikTok content creator. She hopes to empower people to live the sweet debt-proof life through the intentional living and mastering their money mindset. She's also a self-confessed recovered shopaholic, yet now she's amassed a 7-figure savings fund when she's only in her mid-20s, or late 20s rather. Given her 6-year work experience in the corporate world, she does aim to inspire young people like her to take charge of her personal finances and create their own path towards financial freedom. So without further ado, heard on Thursdays, money mindset coach, Nik Madriñan. Hello!
Hello! Hi, Nikki.
Hi, welcome to the show. Well, the first thing I would like to ask my guests usually is, how were you during the pandemic? Was there something that you were doing during those last few years that kept you sane outside of work?
Well, I think I'm trying to flash back to, the first day when you were like, what the hell is going to happen to our country with this whole thing. I remember I was living on my own, but I was like, I don't know if there's going to be a zombie apocalypse or something, but I have to go home with my family to make sure, like, if ever a breakout happens, I'm going to be fine. And so even though it was like a huge adjustment for me, like I was living on my own and then decided to move back with my parents so that we are in this together, whatever it was. And so I think at that time, besides eating a lot of food, because for some reason we were just at home and food is more available. Besides that, I also like got into like working out. Like I feel like it got me really sane because it just kept me moving. And then I'd say also like eventually towards the tail end now when we could go out, I got into biking. So it was like that child in me who like always loved to bike since I was like a kid. And so I love that. I think during the pandemic, we just got back into things that we were really passionate about and we just had fun doing. And so, yeah, I really love that. It's something I'm still doing to this day. And I feel like we'd all be different people if the pandemic didn't happen. And so, yeah, I think that more importantly, it just got me reflecting about my life and where my life is going. So, yeah, that's a really long answer, but then that's the first thing that came to my mind.
No problem. I mean, of course, we all felt kind of stuck in that moment about a couple of years, couldn't really go out, couldn't explore and have fun the way that we used to. So for sure, like it really became introspective for a lot of us that in parang, what are we doing? Where are we in our lives? Are we actually living the life that we want? Or are we working towards that? So yeah, definitely. I was there also. I was journaling. Well, during the pandemic also, did you fall into the trap of like online shopping? A lot of us, I feel like we did that so that it was some sense of normalcy, but it also at some point maybe became a habit and maybe not a healthy one either, because it was something that, or it like the whole receiving and having things delivered to your house, that was like a routine thing, and to get rid of it, I think at some point um probably felt abnormal. So how was that for you, like with online shopping?
Yeah, and I think this is a nice transition as well because as I've shared, like I think all of us or majority of us during the pandemic, we were like questioning a lot of things that we're like, oh, so when we are forced to slow down, when we are forced to like be introspective and like reflect on where our life is going, we don't want to deal with it because we're like, ah, that's too deep for me. Can I just, shop for something and make me feel good about the food I'm gonna buy or the sale that is give me some excitement, some sense of reward. And that in itself, that's how it was for me. Like, shopping was like this distraction from the crisis that was going on in me internally. But then, of course, I say this now because I get it, but at that time I was in denial. So that's why, I've really been passionate about speaking up about it because even just one person that comments in my videos and says that I feel so heard, I feel so seen, that like that's how I felt as well. And then we can normalize that maybe we are, doing some toxic habits that are just in form of a distraction from an internal conflict that we are really, really going through. And we're just in denial. And trust me when I say I was in denial, I was like, but then I can afford it anyway. I can buy the food and I can have weekly deliveries for self-care. Di ba yun yung uso nung pandemic? Self-care. But then that's when I think it's really when we have to question ourselves, like, is this really something that is satisfying us? Or is it really just a false illusion that's giving us a false sense of control because we're just escaping from something that we're scared to confront? Well, we got deep real quick, but then like, that's how I see it.
No, it makes a lot of sense for sure. Kasi a lot of us, we try and avoid it. We try and avoid the part what you're really feeling. So you try and find different outlets, whether healthy or not, to ignore them. So in terms of like the online shopping though, how did you, I guess, resist? Was there a point though na parang you noticed na okay, I feel like I'm online shopping like every day. I should dial it back a little bit. What was the point when you realize that you have to start resisting the urge to do so?
Yeah. The thing about resisting or like the urge, I think for anyone who's like doing it, we kind of have this like at the back of our head telling ourselves that you shouldn't do that. Or like there's something that isn't right. But then you do it anyway. And I think like even for me, hindi lang naman siya nangyari nung pandemic eh. It's something that has been a yo-yo habit for me. Like I've been in like corporate for 6 years, and prior to me being in corporate, I mean, I of course I got all my needs met, right? When I was in high school, college. Pero I felt again, my mindset was like I felt deprived back then. Like because I would compare my allowance to my friends. I would compare my friends who would be able to buy certain things, who would be able, sobrang babaw. Pero yung nakakabili ng merienda, ako hindi, baon lang ako, hindi ako pwedeng bumili ng samahan ko ice cream. I mean, that's so random. But, like, those are the little things that I remember then I would diet so that I could save my allowance to buy makeup. Like, that's how, ganun yung diet ko noon. Diet ko was, para mag-shopping. Okay? So, and so it's really like, it's not even during the pandemic, it was way, way, way back. And then so, eventually when I started earning, I'm like, this is my time. I can finally buy all the luxury makeup. And, I shared this on my channel that it came to a point na for 1 month, I bought like 30,000 worth of like makeup. And at that time, I was like, I blacked out. I don't know. It was like a comical video pa. Because again, it was just like, it's okay. Like, whatever, I can afford it, And going back then, I just say to myself, I blacked out. It was a joke na I blacked out. Pero when I think about it, I was spending blindly, because So that already happened. And I knew that, okay, magtitipid na ako kasi dami ko nang ginastos, diba? So, and then I go into the cycle of like spending a lot, then I have to deprive myself because I need to save the money I lost. And then after depriving myself, I felt like someone who's been dieting so much, therefore I want to eat the next buffet. You know, like that's my analogy. So, para ko yo-yo. I'm gonna spend a lot, deprive myself to save, and then spend a lot because I felt deprived. And it was like this toxic yo-yo cycle. And so when I got into the pandemic, it was really heightened. You know, na parang, like I deserve to reward myself. I've been working so hard for the past, X years in my corporate job and all of that. And so that's why, going back to your question, na resisting, it was there. Kasi nga I was like yo-yoing, right? But then the question was, like, what is going to make me spend sustainably? Kasi I kept like ganun up and down diba? And so that's when I realized na it's not merely like, I need to delete all the apps. I need to delete all the shopping apps because kasalanan to ng mga shopping apps, which in fact hindi, right? It actually makes our life so much easier. And so when it comes to like resisting, parang I would rather look at it as, I don't really look at it as resisting. It was more of rechanneling my energy into something that's more meaningful to me. And then I realized na I was using shopping as a distraction from the things that I've always wanted to do, such as start my business, such as be consistent in my YouTube channel, such as share my message on TikTok no matter how cringe and embarrassing it was. And so that's where I poured like this energy to things that I'm passionate about. And so instead of resisting myself, I rechanneled that energy into something that gives me purpose. And so that's what ultimately stopped the cycle for good. And that's why I share my story today.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I like that you said that you rechanneled it because you're still spending, but then you're spending it for purposes, well, for your life's purpose, and also a purpose that is that if you invest in it, it will still bring money back to you eventually. So it's really like, I think that's a strategic way of actually thinking about like how to avoid like spending more than you should, I guess, on a regular basis. But it's really cool that you were able to share. I guess this is the story of you from being a shopaholic into someone who's more, I guess, responsible in spending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So So any other tips, I guess, for those who might have similar problems in terms of online shopping? Let's say, if you were to buy things online, what are some things to keep in mind? Should they have a list? Should they keep a budget? What are the things that they should do?
Yeah. This is like a very packed question that I have like several videos on. So I'm gonna try to share like the top thing in my mind instead of baka I might ramble on for like the next 30 minutes, right? But I think the first question to ask, I always like, I share in my videos, is like questions to ask yourself so that you could check in with yourself, So I think the first question to ask is, if you are in the cycle of like constantly online shopping and you feel like you can't resist temptation, you can't stop yourself, it's good to ask and check in with yourself, like, what are you distracting yourself from? Like, because again, this shopping behavior, it's just a distraction from something that you don't want to confront. Is it that you feel lost and empty in your career? That's why you're like, might as well find reward in the things I buy. Or is it that you refuse to confront your feelings about something in the past? May it be a broken heart, or may it be like someone who wronged you, and you're just like getting into shopping so that it could fill that void. Because I feel like it's really important to get into the root cause of it. I mean, of course, I did the temporary band-aid solution of like deleting the apps and like unfollowing the Instagram shops, but I keep searching for them pa rin, because I haven't solved it from the root problem. And the root problem I had then was that I was using shopping as an unhealthy coping mechanism for the life crisis that I had then, that I refused to confront. Because I'm like, ever since kasi, parang I was a quote-unquote overachiever, and I like carried it like a badge of honor. Like, oh, I always have to be strong. I always have to be great at everything. I always have to stay longer hours because that's what it means to be successful and worthy of your income and all of that. And so when I started to question that, like, is that really the kind of success that I want? And is all these material things, is that trying to prove something that I actually don't want? You know? And so it's really important to get deep into that, because that's what I realized, that when I became honest with myself about like, Nick, like, you know this is wrong, but like, what is it there that you're trying to not face? And it's oftentimes it's like you need to face yourself right in the mirror and be honest to yourself, like, what is this thing that you are not trying to look at in your face, you know? And so that's number one. Because I feel like that's really for me like what changed everything. Because parang takot ako na to admit that I have these weaknesses, na I can't feel bad about myself. I can't like have a crisis because you're like 25 years old. What crisis are you going through? You know, like there are other bigger problems in the world. But I think if anything, like know that your feelings, what you're going through is valid, and the more that you face them, the more it's gonna be easier to let go. And that's really something that, like when I coach my clients, that's something that they get surprised by. They thought that I would just tell them how to do their Excel sheets, how to do their expense tracking, but we get deep into all of these things, all of their emotions, all of these negative things that they attach around money. Because that's only when we get into breaking the cycle. And then that's when we get into, okay, Len, once you find out what the root cause is and how you can solve it from there, may it be like forgiving yourself for the wrong things, for the decisions you've made in the past about money that you feel shame and guilt from, or may it be like forgiving your parents because they didn't teach you about money. They always fought around money. Like those are these things that we carry with us and translate into like the wrong money habits. And so once we get into that, then we can get into, okay, how do we make sure that we get the right systems in place with your finances, with your budgeting, because that's only when your money habits really, really become sustainable.
Do you have another number? Do you have another tip? But I feel like you said number one and number two.
I know. Yun nga eh. The number one is that, though earlier. And then the second would be like, doon na tayo papasok sa financial systems. And when it comes to the financial systems, it's like really understanding what's the purpose of it. What's the purpose of having your finances intact in the first place? Because oftentimes we're just like, oh, it's for the future. It's for, because I need to be responsible. And isn't that like a blanket statement that you can just find on Google, right? But what is the purpose behind all of it? Like, is it that, you want to go full time in the dream business you always wanted instead of settling for a career just to pay the bills? Or is it that you get to travel more often because you've always had that desire to have more adventures? Or is it that you get to finally get married because you feel like you can finally be financially prepared for it? Like all of these things have to be really clear. Like what are these clear life goals that you are excited to fund, so that when there are potential sale, potential boodles, you're like, oh, that's just a distraction. That's just going to delay the goals that I want. Why would I settle for that? I deserve so much more than that. I deserve to get married to the person I want to be with and be stable in that. I deserve to travel more because that's what I always wanted. I deserve to have fulfillment in my career and invest in skills and time and effort in making that happen. And so that's why I go back to like, what are the goals you want to rechannel your energy towards? Because I believe that the desire can be so much stronger than just resisting. The desire can be so much larger than your life that you follow that. And then you realize that it becomes so much easier to say no to things that don't add value to that goal and say yes to the opportunities that do create an impact to those goals.
I love that. Like it's so profound actually. It's not as simple as just like, okay, how to save, this is what you should do. Like but there are those percentages of around 40, 20, 20, whatever, like those percentages and like where you should put your money or how you should use your money. But this one, really, if you really want to have a good handle on your finances, it's beyond the numbers. It's really psychological and like really identifying what it is, what kind of life it is, and purpose and goals that you want to achieve. Because most of them, I think they're going to involve like financial investment also. So I love that. And I hope like monsters who are tuned in, they will understand, and maybe they're like, they stop their car and they're like, oh my God, you're so right. Like,
I hope so too. They're like, oh my God, this girl is like speaking everything I always thought about. I am attacked.
I am at this moment. In ganon. But it's great though, and so like I love the way that you put importance in like why you should be more financially responsible and how to do it as well. So now, if we can go to the topic of like, okay, so we have different means of wanting to uh spend our money, and one of it, of course, is like using credit cards. So I want to know what your take is on that, considering like when I first had my credit card, I was like, oh my God, I'm so financially free. Like, you don't have to like you just like, you don't have to think about it up until the end of the month when the bill comes out, which can be such a big deal for a lot of us. So it's easy to spend on things if you have a credit card. So how can you then avoid running up a huge credit card bill or incur credit card debt?
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, first off, just to like surprise the people who are listening, like I actually recommend my clients to get a credit card. I actually have a dedicated bonus training for them to like watch how to use credit cards to their advantage, so that they don't see it as something that, oh my gosh, if I get a credit card, I'm gonna get into debt. But rather, oh, if I get a credit card, it could actually like make my life easier and make me feel more responsible. And so like what I always share is that like we sometimes think like the credit card is like the devil, you know. But like actually it's just a tool. It's just a tool, and we are in control. It's up to us. Like, do you trust yourself to use a credit card? Like those are the things. Like, or are you like, oh, but like if I use a credit card, I might get into debt and all of that. And so it's a question of, that's why it's super important that before we like get into like getting a credit card, are your habits already intact? Meaning, do you trust yourself to spend on the right things? Do you trust yourself that you're able to save consistently before you even get a credit card? Kasi nga, ang sabi mo nga, if you have a credit card, parang ano yan parang feeling mo endless yung limit, quote unquote, right? So, before you get to that level, it's important that you get the foundations right first, which is, as I talked about, is your mindset right about money, and are your habits healthy? Meaning that, do you spend guilt-free? Do you save in such a way you don't feel deprived? Like, do you already have that balance, so that when the credit card comes in, it's just gonna magnify the habit you already have, So, like for my clients, like that's why, like for me, I use my credit cards like 80% of my purchases, because it makes my life easier. So, like for instance, as you said, you only pay it. There's a specific due date. Okay, parang just to not be so technical, but there's like a statement date, which is your billing cycle, and then there's a due date, which is when you actually pay for it. Magkaiba siyang numero, magkaiba siyang date. And so it's important that to give like specific tips is like to be clear on what that date is. Okay, kung yung statement date ko ito yung due date ko, let's make sure I pay everything on my due date in full, so that it doesn't incur interest charges, it doesn't incur surprise, but bigla pala itong lumabas sa aking credit card, yung mga ganon. So, for me, it helps me because I can see it in the app, what I purchased, without having to track them, because alam ko nandun na siya so I use BPI credit card, and so it's in the app. I know like what I swiped for, and then I know that I'll just pay them on a specific date, and then that's it. I don't have to think about na how do I make sure that I get to pay them. It's more of like, how can you trust yourself that you're gonna pay all of this on time, and that's it. Like it gets to be like, because with my clients, like they also come to me with that na parang, they've like seen like the debts pile up with their credit cards, and then it still goes back to like what caused that to pile up. And then most of the time it goes back to like, oh, because at that time, like they had these kinds of thoughts around money with like, oh, because I was trying to like buy this because I want to treat my family. Usually, for example, I want to treat my family, so sinwipe ko yung credit card ko because I want to prove to them I'm successful eh. But then when you see your credit card, you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Why didn't I set a boundary? Why didn't I become honest to them that, oy, sabi natin KKB, di ba? O, walang mga ganyan-ganyan. Yung mga, example like that. Or like, for instance, like, yung mga moments na napaswipe ka without thinking, nag-blackout ka lang, So these are these things na parang what happened then? What phase in your life were you then that allowed you to keep spending blindly? Because again, credit card is just a tool. It's up to us that we need to feel in control first of our finances before we even get a credit card. Because if hindi, the credit card will control us. And I've seen it. The interest charges can be so insane. It's like 3 months, 1 year. It's like, what the hell? Yung 8,000 ko naging 6 figures na. Diba? And so, it can happen just like that. And so, it's important that you're confident with the habits that you have around money before you even get a credit card. So that when the credit card comes in, you're like, I got this.
All right. Well, I mean, I hope that a lot of us who do own credit cards, that we got this. I say that hesitantly. Because we might have things that we need working on for sure when we're handling our credit cards. And because it's sometimes you forget it's like so liberating. It's me, like whenever I use my credit card, especially for something that's like out of the blue, it's not part of my budget, but then it's like, if I don't get it now, when else would I get it? Which I think is another kind of way of thinking that a lot of people would have when it comes to shopping, right? So if I don't get it now, then it might disappear. It might not be available anymore. It might whatever. Like we have some excuse for it. So yeah, so I always hesitantly, I always make a joke with like the cashier pa to try and appease it. So
take my credit card before I change my mind. Mga galon.
Now before I change my mind. So for sure, those moments talaga. And even swiping the card and then hoping that it comes in, as in like hoping that it processes. You don't know how much you've spent already.
Yeah.
Prayer that you sometimes do. It's just it's very fascinating to have a credit card. You have that side like that. But anyway, so thank you for answering that question. I hope more of us monsters will try and be more responsible and ready in handling our credit card and expenditures also with our credit cards. Now, I love that you're giving so much good advice, but like when you were a shopaholic and you had that yo-yo habit, did you consult another coach or was it all just you? Like, was there an epiphany or did someone show you that, okay, here's how you can be better in spending?
Because to answer that question straightforward, no. Like it was because I realized it wasn't so much as like the money problem was like a life problem. Every money problem is connected to a life problem. And so for me, it goes back to what I like mentioned earlier was that it wasn't strictly about like how do I make sure the percentages are right? How do I make sure I track all of my expenses? Because I tried every single financial tip in the book. I tried envelope method. I tried the Excel sheets. I tried budgeting apps. I tried journaling them. I tried everything. So I was like, what is it? Like, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Like, why can't I feel more in control of my finances? And then I realized that it's really just a matter of taking a step back of like, what's causing all of this to happen? And so if there's any person that I confided in at that time, it wasn't really money related. It was like a career life related concern. So like my older sister, yung ate ko, she's like one of my mentors, and it's because I love that I admire her for having an entrepreneurial spirit, starting her own business. She literally moved her life to Germany. to work there. Like,
Wow.
uprooted her life in the Philippines despite having like a stable corporate job, moved to Germany because she said, "This is where I want to live. My heart is here. I'm gonna do everything I can to stay here." And so that's why I
Wow.
always admired her for that. And so I always ask her about, I remember when this is like a message thread that I took a screenshot of it. I was like in that stage in my life, and I was like, I told her like, isn't it irresponsible if I just quit my job and pursue what I really wanted, like pursue my passions? And then she's
Mm.
like, I just remembered na she just kept challenging me of like, what's stopping you? What's in the way of you doing all of that? Don't you want to think that pag 40 years old ka, you're proud of yourself when you're 24, 25, that you actually took the leap for what you really wanted? Or you just want to stay miserable where you are, you know? And then at that time, I was like, oh, because I'm worried to lose my savings. I'm worried to lose my savings if I quit my job and da da da. And then this is something that always stuck with me that she told me. And she's like, Nick, we grew up always wanting to worry about money, making sure we have a stable job, making sure that we have savings, because that's how we grew up. Like
Yeah.
my dad is masinop talaga. Nung time na we had the rough patches, like my dad was really honest about us in the family. And so that's what my sister told me na parang, Nick, it's great that we were taught to worry about money. But then it becomes bad when we're always just worried to lose it. And at the cost of what? At the cost of the dreams that you've really wanted. And so that really made me think about, ah, kaya siguro ako bili ng bili kasi feeling ko yung mga pangarap ko malayo. I just keep settling for the small things because my big dreams just seem far away. That's what clicked in me. Like when we were going through the conversation. And that's what made me realize, oh my gosh, this is probably not just me. This is not just me. We're not just shopping because we don't have control. We don't have discipline. No, it's not that. We lack something deeper. We lack purpose. We lack fulfillment. We lack excitement every day because that's what I lack. And so that's what I just started talking about in my YouTube channel. I was like, okay, I don't care if people are gonna judge me. I'm gonna say I'm a shopaholic, da 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 da, and I like have this quarter life crisis. People are gonna judge me like, what the hell are you going through? Like, madami pang mas walang problema sa mundo and all of that. And then that's when I realized that it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me who felt this some type of way. And then that's when I realized that no one has really talked about it in this angle yet. No, because this is my personal experience. This is my personal journey. And so when I just started talking about my personal story, and then when I got messages about people saying they were inspired by my story, they were inspired to save for the emergency fund, to move out, to travel, to start a business, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is what really
Wow.
matters, like this is why shopping is just a distraction from the dreams that we really want. And so that's why I was compelled to share about it, and that's why I was compelled to coach people about it, because for me that's what created the lasting change in my life, and that's why I'm talking here today.
Mm. That's so nice of you to share. I'm so glad. And I'm really happy for you to have a sister like that, to push you and really ask the hard questions about what's stopping you and like really, I mean, while still making you weigh the pros and cons of it. But it's really realizing that I love what you said about like how like your dreams seem so far away. That's why you're settling for something that might just be temporary for now. So and that's kind of like a life lesson if you think about it too, which is so amazing. And to put it
Yeah.
into financial terms as well, I think that's really brilliant. So, in terms
Mhm.
of being a money mindset coach, though, how did you? So, when did you decide that you wanted to coach people, and what were the steps that you took into becoming a
Mhm.
money mindset coach? And was there really such a thing as a money mindset coach before you started?
Yeah. This is a nice transition, because now that you shared that earlier about, that it's so great that I have a sister like that, because bunso kasi ako. So like yung feeling na I'm so thankful na I have an ate like that. And so like sometimes I just get so emotional sometimes, like when my clients tell me like, parang you're like my ate, like when you coach me, or like I feel like I have an older sister. And then just that just takes me back to like, this is why I love what I do is because I get to be that person to people who don't have an older sister, who don't have parents they can talk to, who don't have friends that they can relate to what they're going through. Like, I realized that, like, because my sister was like that to me, I felt it, like I was like, what if I could be that light to other people? What if I could spark that, like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm shopping this way. That's why I'm spending this way. What if that I could help them spark something like that in their life? And that really pushed me forward. And I always share that to my sister, like she inspired me to do what I do. Because she pulled me from that place that I didn't even know was my rock bottom. I was like, what the hell? Alam mo yung pag ano to call that term, like self-deprecating. Tama ba?
Deprecation.
Yeah. But I was
Deprecating.
like, self-deprecating jokes. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so miserable, ha ha ha, but I need to pay the bills. Parang ganun ako ng ganun sa sister ko noon. So parang, I was like joking myself, but I remember I was like texting her, I was like crying while sending jokes about my life, and that's why, like, when I started seeing those messages from the people who were like watching my channel and like watching my videos, I was like, what if I could be that person for them? What if I could be that person where they could realize that they're meant for something so much more. They deserve so much more. And like, I remember when I was going through like this, oh my gosh, people need to know this, right? I was like going through like, oh my gosh, like this, di lang ako to for sure. And I was trying to put words into it. I was like, what is this? Because I was like, this is not like financial advisor. This is not like financial coach. Like, this is not just like a money coach. Like, because I was searching, I was like, it's not that. It's something deeper that I went through. And so I remember I saw like foreigners or money mindset coaches. Like, it's normal in the US, in other countries. Like, it's normal to have a money mindset coach. And I was like, how come in the Philippines wala? Bakit wala dito? And aren't we so much more deserving of that because we have such a toxic Filipino mindset about, guilt tripping kapag ka hindi nagbigay, guilt tripping kapag hindi nanlibre, yung mga ganong types of mindset. I'm like, why don't we have this in our country? Because I feel like more than ever, we have the space to create this new generation of like, what if we break the cycle? What if tayo? Kasi sometimes we keep blaming, di ba? Na parang, kasi yung parents natin, ganun. Kasi sabi nila, ganun, ganyan. How long are we going to subscribe to that? Di ba? What if we get to be the change ourselves? And that's what I realized na parang, you know what? I remember when I started talking about it, I felt like it was so controversial. Because like, as you said, I'm not talking about Excel sheets. I'm not talking about, like saving hacks and all of that. But then I knew I had to speak about it because it was my truth and it was my story. And if some people didn't relate to it, they're free to leave. But if they are, then they can talk to me. And that what kept me going, and that made me realize na pwede to sa Pilipinas. I could be the first one and I don't care. No one has done it. I don't care. I want to make sure I get to be that person to someone in the same way my sister was to me. And so, yeah, that really pushed me to get to invest in a course to kickstart my coaching business. And then eventually I invested in a coaching certification so that I could better empower my clients in instilling the right money beliefs, in understanding what thoughts they have around money and how they can reframe those thoughts into something that is more empowering, that is more self-serving to them. And so the more I got into like understanding like the language and science of the mind, the more I realized how powerful our mind can be in creating the reality that we want.
Yes.
In like checking in with ourselves. Ano ba yung bakit nga ba ako nagsispend ng ganito? It's because it's something with our thoughts. Our thoughts become the reality. I thought I was like, okay, like thought naman. But then when I really like got trained into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I kept seeing the same results back then. That's why I still felt miserable, because I had thoughts about myself. Like, I don't deserve that. I'm not responsible. I have to be responsible. I can't just quit my job. Oh, I can't just like pursue a passion project. I need to like stay in a stable job. Like those are the thoughts that I had. That's why I couldn't pursue the things that I wanted. And so I just kept giving into impulsive buying, retail therapy. Because yun yung madali, di ba? It's easy to just click checkout and the item comes to your door. It's much harder to be real with yourself and be like, is this really what you want? Or are you just settling? you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that led me to where I am today. Na I just shared na I transitioned to being a money mindset and life coach because I realized more than ever that our money habits and money mindset can really make or break the trajectory of our life. Because I've
Yeah.
seen it in my life. When I had these toxic thoughts around money, I couldn't pursue the business. I couldn't take the leap for what I wanted, you know, and how major life milestones in our life involve making crucial money decisions, whether we like it or not. You know, the things that we want, big dreams, come with big investments. And so
So
that's
true.
why I felt it's so important than ever that we stop thinking of money and life as two complete buckets. They need to be aligned. Kasi kung hindi siya aligned, pinapahirapan lang natin yung sarili natin. You know, money needs to be a bridge to the life that we want.
I
And
love that.
yeah.
Yeah. Money needs to be a bridge to build the life that you want. That is so no, that's so like I am learning as I am talking to you. I'm just like at some point I was about to get teary eyed. I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing with my life? It's got to that
I've done the job then.
just like a free coaching session. Oh my gosh. Wait, so there were actual money mindset classes that you had to take for you to become the money mindset coach? Or like how did that come through?
So in terms of like the first course that I took, it was more of like helping you understand what kind of coach I want to be, you know, what kind of problem I want to help my clients solve. And it was really getting into what did I go through? What did I go
Yeah.
through? Like, which is like from my quarter life crisis to now being able to save six figures. Parang I started off with that, you know? And so when I got clear on that, I was like, oh, what if this is something that I could help my clients get clear on? And so that's what I started talking about. But then eventually, as I started coaching my clients and really like look into what kind of problems my clients are going through, I realized that it's much more deeper in our minds. You know, it's much more deeper into like the generational patterns that we grew up with. Like even for me, I realized myself na parang, oh, that's why I was thinking this way is because like my lola thought that way. You know, like it's really that it goes there. And not until like we like identify it and identify, ano ba yung rason ko bakit ako nag-iisip ng ganito? Kasi sometimes we just accept. We don't question it. Like, because ganon. Because dapat. Because kailangan. Pero when we ask ourselves, dapat ba talaga? Kailangan ba talaga? Or you just don't question it. They're just these rules, you know? And so that's why I was compelled to get into more deep coaching training, which is like not to be so like technical, but it's neuro linguistic programming. So it's NLP. It's understanding the language and science of the mind and how our thoughts and beliefs shape our reality and shape the habits that we have. And when I really got deep into that, I was even more like gigil to be like, this is why I talk about what I do. Like, this is why we need to talk about how our mindset can really make or break, you know, our habits or the actions that we take. And so that's why I realized na I knew that I needed to stick by to, parang it's what they call kasi the niche. Parang yun yung parang focus mo sa audience mo. And so at first I was like, you know, and you know what? Like, I remember even the people around me, they're like, ano yun? Ano yung money mindset? Ano yun? Parang, you know, and the thing was, even that in itself was like a challenge for me. I was like, people are not gonna get this. But then my people are gonna get it. And that's what I really stuck with. Na parang, not everyone is meant to understand my message. But the right people will get it. They will be so glad I popped into their FYP, I popped into their feed, and they're like, this girl makes me feel seen, makes me feel understood, and I'm gonna keep listening to her. And so, yeah, even though like sa Pilipinas, it's not, I don't know, normal yung mga financial advisors, right? And so, I was like, there's already abundance of that. What if I stay true to what my story is and really look into how my story can be that light to one person. I was just like focusing on one person. I was like, this one person, meron yan eh. And then that one person became another. And then now I've coached like 50 plus clients already. And it's like the best job in the world.
I love that. I love that for you, and it's great that it resonates because I mean, already with me talking to you, it resonates on a deep level. Na parang you feel like for people who are close to our age, it's like you're trying to figure out now. You're at that point in your life. It's like yeah, you're really thinking how you want your future to look like. You're no longer in your early 20s when you're just like you want to have fun. You still want to have fun, but you want to be a little more responsible now because it's leading up to something like, in a decade or something that you're working on. So I'm really glad that you're able to I'm really hoping and I'm manifesting this for you that you get more clients because really I feel like this is important. I really do believe this you're doing important for all of us. Now, as a money mindset coach, like so let's pretend I'm a client. what
Sure.
what do you usually do your process, or what are the things that you like to focus on so that you can help your clients be more financially savvy?
Mm. Well, before my client becomes a client, um, I like to get to know them first and where they are. So that's why I encourage those who are interested in working with me to book like a free assessment call. Like I want to make sure first we're aligned. Like clearing expectations, and also I want to get to know you, your situation, your goals, your priorities, because I also want to make sure I'm the right fit to help you. Because if it's not, I can refer you to someone. But if I am the right person to help you, and if you feel aligned in being coached by me, then we get into like, okay, now let's get into the actual coaching, right? Like you actually become my client, for instance. Because for me, it's super important kasi like it's kind of for that um, where you are, I can help you to where you want to be. That's why I get into a free call first, all of my clients, to make sure that we are on the same page and that the expectations are clear. And then after that, like in terms of my process, so we go through my 3-step like roadmap during our 8 weeks together. And the first, part of it is really rewriting your money story. Because we've been told about certain things about money, right? And so it's important not only to reframe those toxic beliefs and toxic thought patterns that we didn't even know were in the way because we just believed them because we grew up with them. So it's important that we understand what money story have you been telling yourself for years that's creating the reality you have right now. And if you don't like the reality right now, how can we change that money story? And so that's one of the things in that phase. But of course, at the start, I coach my clients to get really clear on what they want. What do you really want out of life? Because that's the big question mark, isn't it? When we're like 25 now, we're like, I've been earning for a lot na, for a lot of years na. They said you study hard, get a high paying job, and then they don't say what's the rest. What? You're supposed to
Yeah.
just get married and settle down? Like, I have like 40 more years. Like, so we forget that part. That like instead of chasing money, instead of being driven by money, what's the purpose? What is your purpose behind waking up every day? So that's something that I help my clients with at the very start of getting clear on their life goals, their life vision, their life mission, so that they know where their future is going. Because if they know where their future is going, they know where their money is going to be spent. They know what their priorities are. They know how they're going to invest. They know where to allocate their money. Because I realized when I didn't know where my life was going, yung pera ko everywhere. When I was spending blindly, I was feeling blind about where my life was going. And so that's why when I created my program, it's literally like my 6 years of trial and error into 60 days condensed. Because I was like, this is it. Like if I were to talk to myself in 60 days, this is how I would like coach myself, basically. And so I wish I started off with that. I wish I started off with, Nick, ano bang gusto mo? Because is it really what you want, or you're just conforming to what people expect of you? Because most of the time it is.
Yeah.
And so we get really clear on that, on what their goals are that are unique to them. so that they know that, oh, this is what gives me purpose. This is what's going to make it easy for me to prioritize what I want. And so after that, then we get deep into like, okay, how can your financial system align with those goals? How can
Yes.
your budgeting systems, how can your expense tracking align with prioritizing these goals? Because from there, it's going to be easy to be like, oh, this is in my wish list. This is what I say no to because it doesn't add value to my goals. It's easy to never mind. Or what I always share to my clients is that it's not really so much as differentiating wants versus needs. I don't believe that for me because I believe that the opposite. I did the opposite. I focused on what I truly wanted. Kasi yung
Mm,
wants versus needs, need is like survival. Survival
yeah,
lang yun eh. But do we want to just stay in survival mode?
right.
Are we just like hustling, working hard just to survive and pay for our needs? That's why eventually we feel deprived. And so we go back to the same cycle of like, I need to reward myself because I just keep
Mhm.
focusing on my needs. Diba? So I realized that when I prioritized and knew what I really wanted, then it was easy for me to be like, okay, I'm going to invest in that course. I'm going to save up for my emergency fund so I could quit my job. Oh, then I'm going to invest in coaching certification so that I could better support my clients. It became easy for me to spend on big things because I knew it was my priority. And so that's why the financial system comes after knowing what you want out of your life, you know. And then lastly is so rewrite your money story, reboot your finances with the financial system, and now it's lastly is reclaiming your freedom. You know, reclaiming your freedom as an adult. Kasi ironically, parang alam mo naging adult tayo, parang naging opposite. Kala natin we're like, oh, finally I have the freedom. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not constrained with allowance and all of that. But then it happens real quick when you're like, no, it's like the opposite because we're like, oh, now I get to make adult choices. Like I'm accountable now as an adult. What is this? You know? And so that's why it's important that we get to reclaim the control of our lives and hold ourselves responsible in the right way. Not blaming ourselves and not like degrading ourselves. It's more of like, oh, because I know what I want now. I know what beliefs serve me. Therefore, I know now what it really takes for me to be mentally and financially prepared to take that logical leap for my dreams. So that's why I coach my clients on is like the logical leap of freedom system. Like I want them to feel like I'm taking the leap logically, mentally, I'm ready. Kasi most of the time we're like, okay, let's just quit my job and like start business and like travel the world. But then you're like, oh, pag hindi ready finances mo, mas stress ka lang. And doesn't that
Oh,
defeat the purpose of going after your dreams, diba? And then you build resentment. You're like, oh, that's why you shouldn't go after your dreams. It's because you're only gonna be stressed, diba?
yeah.
But what if, before you even do that, you already trust in yourself that you can do this, and your finances will give you that safety net as well. So, ayun, in 60 days, that's what I guide my clients through. And what my clients expect is like, and I share with them, is that 30% is me asking questions and listening. 70% is them talking. Because I'm just here to ask you empowering questions so that you can arrive at the best solutions. So,
Mm.
pero here, syempre interview, so madaldal ako. Pero when I coach my clients, it's really like 70% of them talking because that's where the realizations and like, oh my gosh, kaya pala ganito ako. Ito pala yung gusto ko, ganon. That's when it comes naturally.
Yeah, for sure. You're definitely doing the 70% right now. I'm probably 30% talking. But it's no problem because you have so much input as well. And it's a very important topic for a lot of us because, inflation right now, right? US dollar, peso exchange rate. Let's not even
I
go
know,
there.
crazy.
So, okay. So let's still pretend like, I am still your client and I want to invest in something big, even as simple as not even as simple, but even like in terms of traveling, it's an experience. You're investing in an experience. So, but it's like there's that hesitation. It's like I don't really know what I will get in return because it's like you're spending money, but then you're not going to you're not necessarily getting it back. Your ROI is probably memories, like being able to travel in these places. But what are your thoughts, I guess, and with those people who are hesitant, one, pursuing the dream that they want, which they know will incur like a huge financial investment, and also pursuing their other dreams, which is like, again, like after COVID, they want to travel again. So, like, what are your thoughts on investing that much, I guess, on experiences and then in terms of like your passion mismo?
Yeah. What the first thing that comes to mind is like most of the time we're focused on like, oh, but it's a big amount of money if I invest of that. But what if I want to ask you or whoever relates to that is like, how about what's the cost of staying exactly where you are? What's the cost of staying exactly right where you are right now for the next 10 years? What's the cost of that? Because isn't that much bigger?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Go on, go on.
No, for you. Like, how about you? Like, what do you think it is?
Oh, okay. Um, I feel well. Honestly, I would feel like I would regret it if I don't do anything about it, and I would probably feel at some point stuck that I'm not really doing anything that I've been dreaming about, even as maybe ever since I was young, or I'm unable to try other things that I'm curious about also.
Mm-hmm. So what if you carry that for the next 5 years? Are you okay with that?
No. I mean, I'm already struggling now. I feel like 5 years of struggle I feel like that would be a little bit more stressful. But yes, I mean, it's like, yes, I do want to do all of these things. But I think for me and for a lot of us, it's like money really does set us back. So how do we change our mindset about money and spending that way and also that much on yourself so that we don't feel resentment
Yeah.
for doing so? I mean, in this
Yeah.
mindset, like recently before actually making the investment.
Yeah. Like, first off, like, that's why I wanted to ask you that is because you get to really check in with yourself. Gusto ko ba talaga to? Or parang, wala lang, fun lang. Which is okay too. But like, I see in you, I observed in how you responded that this is something that's weighing heavy on you. That if you don't do it in the next year or so, you're gonna regret it. I see that. So okay, let's assume, okay, check. Like, it's something that you really, really want. Because that's the first step, right? Now the second step is, as you said, you don't want to just be like, bye world, bye job, bye, like you don't want to just be like that and like do whatever you want. Because I get it. I was there. I was like, I remember I just went, can I just like do YouTube for like the next 1 year and like just quit my job? I remember I was just like crying my eyes out because it was something I was so passionate about, and I knew that being in corporate wasn't it. And so I was like, okay, so how can I take responsibility for this fear? Okay, okay, Nick, what am I really scared of? So you get to ask yourself, what am I really scared of? Oh, I'm scared I'm gonna be humiliated for doing this, or I'm scared I'm gonna drain out my savings. Okay, so let's go with the first. I literally wrote this down, by the way, not even like hypothetical situation. I was like, oh, number one, people are gonna think I'm a hypocrite. I'm such like the corporate. Like, I literally have friends to this day. They're like, we're so surprised you did this because they saw me as like the workaholic in corporate. And so I realized I was holding on to that identity. I was so scared that they're not gonna think of me as someone successful anymore. I'm a hypocrite. And I was like, oh, so Nick, ano mas gusto mo? I-judge ka nila for what you don't want, or i-judge ka nila doing what you want? And I was like, oh, I would rather be judged for doing what I want. And that's exactly what I'm still going through right now. I mean, it's not all the time, pero I know that hindi naman ma-avoid yun eh. People are gonna judge you no matter what. Might as well do what you want. And so I was like, okay, check. Okay, gets. Okay, Nick. Next is, paano pag-drain out my savings? No, pinaghirapan mo yan for 6 years. Now what?
Yeah.
And I was like, am I really gonna drain it? How am I gonna drain it? Aren't I going to invest in a course so I could do my business properly? Aren't I going to make sure that I created a freedom fund? So this is what I help my clients with. to create a freedom fund where you give yourself permission to go after the dreams you've always wanted. Para may safety net ka. Hindi yung parang kakakuha mo lang ng bonus mo tapos goodbye. Diba? So like, it's important na I check in with myself, Nick, how in the world are you gonna drain your savings? You know, like, before you, sige, let's say, nahirapan ka sa, I remember, I literally wrote this down. I was like, okay, let's say mahirapan ka sa business mo. Get a part-time job first. But one thing's for sure, you're not gonna give up on your business, aren't you? You're gonna keep going. So it's just gonna be temporary. You're not gonna drain out your savings. Hanap ko dyan sa LinkedIn, hanap ko dyan sa Upwork, whatever it is, just for you to keep going and doing what you really want. And so I was like, okay. So what I realized was like, think of it like yung mga fears natin about pursuing our dreams, they seem bigger than we think because we don't open up about them. We don't write them down. So that's what happened to me all this time. Nick, imposible yan kasi, di ba? Drain out my savings mo, o di ba, hypocrite ka, ganyan. I was saying all these things, not questioning them. Are you? Are you really going to drain it out? Are you really a hypocrite? Or are you just gonna stay true to what you want? You know? And so these are the things na it's important to identify what is the real fear. You know, what's really in the way and what's made up. Kasi sometimes we make up the worst scenarios. So yung analogy ko that I shared in my Instagram was like, alam mo yung nung bata tayo and we're like so scared of the dark room, of dark closet. Pero when you think about it, we're not scared of the dark. We're scared that there might be sadako or multo. Pag binuksan natin, meron dyang lalabas na ano yung lalabas sa TV? Si Sadako yun, di ba?
Yeah, si Sadako.
Yun. That's what we're scared of. Oh my gosh, there's a freaking dark room and you're imagining all of the kinds of monsters that we see in horror movies, right? Mm-hmm. So this is the analogy. It's like, what's really scaring you is the monster you're making up in your head.
Wow.
And aren't we making up a lot of things in our head? But in reality, ang nakakatakot lang naman is the dark room. The dark room, okay, what if I just turn on the lights? Turn it on. Okay, not so scary pala. Now I know what I'm dealing with. We're just really scared of turning on the lights. That's what I really think it is.
I love that I actually got to sit in your TED Talk today.
I know, right? Pwede bang i-record na lang to sa TED Talk ko, no?
Diba? You had so many good lines. I'm just saying that. Like, it's like, I wanted to write down, but I didn't have like a ball pen with me. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, money, build a bridge to the life that you want. The people were just afraid we can just switch on the light. Oh my God. Like, there's so much. And I love it. I love it so much. But I mean, we are out of time already. But I mean, that if that's Monsters, that's a glimpse of like what you can expect if you want Nik Madriñan as your money mindset coach. And I think it's very useful to have and to realize, you know, things that you really want in life so that you can pursue them instead of hesitate going after them. And I think Nick here, she can be very helpful with that. So before we say goodbye though, how can Monsters find you? Plug in your socials, your program also, if there's any start date, go ahead.
First off, thank you for having me and thank you for being in the receiving end. I feel like I pierced through you and, you know, I feel like I've done my job. Because if anything, I just want to make sure I make one person feel seen and understood, and I feel like I've done that for you here and hopefully for our viewers too, and I'm happy about that. So in terms of where to find me and all these things that I share, I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube with my handle at That's So Nick. And if you want to join my one-on-one coaching program, just DM me on Instagram or check the link in my bio. It's really straightforward. But if you just want to chat about the aha moments from the interview here, if sobrang tumagos, meron kang, you know, insight na talagang nag-penetrate sa'yo, I would love to hear from you. You can DM me. You can DM me on Instagram. I love chatting with people who resonate with my content, and we can connect over there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nick, for gracing us with the show with your presence and with your knowledge and with the realization that, we really do need money mindset coaches, I guess, to be more popular here as well. But, you know, props to you for actually starting this out as well. And so I hope you get more credit for sure for changing people's lives one client at a time. And so thank you so much. And for all the monsters who have tuned in, I hope you guys have learned at least one thing from this episode. I'm sure you have. I feel like we're pretty much in that mindset about like how we can better handle our finances. So there we go. That's it for Heard on Thursdays. Catch me again next Thursday. But for now, keep a lock right here on The Monster. Bye, guys.
Monster exclusive interview. Monster exclusive interview. Only from Manila's hottest. Monster RX93.1.